Picture this. You wake up on a quiet weekday morning, reach for your phone, and the headlines practically leap off the screen. Federal judges rebuke the White House yet again. Over the past 12 months, American courtrooms from coast to coast have transformed into veritable battlegrounds, with judges appointed by presidents from both major parties, issuing bold, at times scathing, rebukes to the Trump administration's policies and legal strategies. The question on everyone's mind: is this the ultimate demonstration of constitutional checks and balances in action? Or are we witnessing the first tremors of a constitutional earthquake, one that could shake the very foundations of American democracy? To make sense of this unprecedented moment, we need to take a step back and examine the intricate dance between the executive and judicial branches in the United States. The nation's founders envisioned a system where power would be divided. Congress would craft the laws, the president would execute them, and the courts would interpret what those laws mean in practice. This system, the famed separation of powers, was designed to prevent any one branch from becoming too powerful, and to ensure that the rule of law would endure, even in times of political turmoil. Yet, in recent years, these carefully drawn boundaries have come under increasing strain. Never in living memory have so many federal judges, from every corner of the ideological spectrum, spoken so openly and directly against the actions of a sitting president. Their decisions have not only touched on the usual flashpoints, immigration, trade, and education, but have also extended into new realms like the governance of artificial intelligence, the rights of transgender Americans, and even academic freedom at the nation's leading universities. Stanford University's Adam Bonica has observed, "Judges from across the ideological spectrum are ruling against administration policies at remarkable rates." He is not exaggerating. In the summer of 2025, the American Civil Liberties Union successfully blocked a sweeping executive order that would have upended the principle of birthright citizenship, a move that civil liberties advocates hailed as a decisive victory for constitutional protections. Just 1 month earlier, the Supreme Court handed down a ruling that fundamentally altered the rules for nationwide injunctions, making it more difficult for lower courts to halt presidential actions with immediate, nationwide effect. Both of these events are part of a much broader pattern. The courts are flexing their muscles, and the executive branch is pushing back hard. The tension is not limited to policy disputes. The forced resignation of the University of Virginia's president in June amid widespread speculation of White House pressure sent shockwaves through the academic world. University leaders, faculty, and students alike voiced concern that executive overreach was threatening not only institutional autonomy, but also the broader principle of academic freedom, a cornerstone of American higher education for over 2 centuries. But perhaps the most striking feature of this new era is the language judges are using. No longer content with dry, technical legal reasoning, many judges are delivering pointed, even withering, critiques from the bench. Judge Leonie Brinkema of Virginia did not mince words. "This is a terrible, terrible affidavit. If this were before me in a criminal case and you were asking to get a warrant issued on this, I'd throw you out of my chambers." Judge Jamal Whitehead from Washington described the government's legal tactics as interpretive jiggery-pokery of the highest order, suggesting that administration lawyers were not merely stretching the truth, but inventing new legal realities. Even judges appointed by President Trump himself have joined in. Judge Stephanie Gallagher of Maryland reminded government attorneys, "This is a court of evidence," signaling that mere assertions would not suffice. The New York Times recently compiled 48 examples of judges, appointed by both Democratic and Republican presidents, who have issued tough, even biting, criticisms of the current administration's approach. Judge Patrick Schiltz, appointed under President George W. Bush, expressed disbelief at the government's willingness to bend the rules. "The court cannot imagine how the public interest might be served by permitting federal officials to flaunt the very laws that they have sworn to enforce." Judge James Boasberg of the District of Columbia accused government lawyers of egregious cherry-picking in their handling of deportation cases, while Judge Louis Lyman, a Trump appointee, dismissed the administration's arguments over New York's congestion pricing as nonsensical. What is driving this wave of judicial resistance? Legal scholars and political analysts offer a variety of explanations. Some, like Jessica Levinson of Loyola Law School, argue that the courts are sending a message to Congress. There are critical issues that require legislative action, and the judiciary cannot serve as the sole check on executive ambition. Jonathan Haffetz of Seton Hall warns of a defiance of due process, a situation in which fundamental rights and procedural fairness are subverted for political gain. Meanwhile, Morgan Bailey, a legal advisor at Meyer Brown, suggests that the Trump administration has learned from its early setbacks in the courts and is now preparing its legal strategies with far greater care and sophistication. Yet for every judicial victory, there is a countermove from the executive branch. The Supreme Court's recent decision to restrict nationwide injunctions has made it more difficult for lower courts to block presidential actions across the entire country, effectively giving the White House a freer hand to implement its agenda, at least in the short term. This has profound implications for how quickly and how broadly executive orders can take effect. Where once a single federal judge could halt a policy nationwide, now challenges must often proceed case by case, jurisdiction by jurisdiction, potentially leading to a patchwork of rules and outcomes. The role of state attorneys general has grown dramatically in this environment. Acting as guardians of federalism, they have launched a flurry of lawsuits, challenging executive orders on issues ranging from environmental regulations to healthcare, from education to technology. The result is a legal landscape that is more decentralized and unpredictable than ever before. Imagine a scenario in which a dozen states each pursue their own legal strategies, creating a labyrinth of ongoing litigation that can delay or derail federal policies for months or even years. In some cases, this has allowed local values and priorities to shape national debates. But it has also raised fears of gridlock and confusion as states pull in different directions. The practical consequences of this tug-of-war are enormous. Policies affecting millions of people, immigration rules, trade agreements, protections for minority groups, and the governance of artificial intelligence can be thrown into limbo for months on end. Families may be separated, businesses left in regulatory uncertainty, and universities forced to rewrite their policies at a moment's notice. For ordinary Americans, the stakes are deeply personal. Will a new immigration rule keep a family together or tear it apart? Will a change in AI regulation open doors for technological innovation or stifle it with red tape? This contest of wills between the executive and judiciary is more than a legal drama. It is an emotional stress test for American democracy itself. Every new court case, every pointed judicial rebuke raises the question, are we witnessing a vibrant system of checks and balances? Or is the very foundation of democracy beginning to show cracks under the weight of relentless political polarization and legal brinkmanship? If the current trajectory continues, some fear that the nation could edge toward a full-blown constitutional crisis. What would that look like? Imagine a scenario in which the executive branch openly defies a direct court order, plunging the country into uncharted legal and political waters. Alternatively, the push and pull between judges and the White House could ultimately reinforce the rule of law, demonstrating the resilience of American institutions even in the most turbulent times. As Daniel Lyons of Boston College Law School observes, the courts are struggling to keep pace, but their willingness to intervene shows that the guardrails of democracy are still in place, though under more strain than ever before. Let's explore the possible futures that could emerge from this historic standoff. On one hand, the Supreme Court's decision to curtail nationwide injunctions may empower the presidency, allowing executive actions to take effect more swiftly and with fewer immediate obstacles. For some observers, this is a welcome corrective, a means of ensuring that government remains nimble and effective. But others see a dangerous erosion of safeguards. When the balance tips too far in favor of the executive, the very protections designed to shield civil liberties and minority rights can be weakened, sometimes irreparably. Jonathan Hafetz of Seton Hall cautions, the administration's defiance of due process sets a dangerous precedent that future leaders could exploit. In other words, today's legal shortcuts could become tomorrow's standard operating procedure, eroding the very foundations of constitutional government. In the long run, the greatest risk may not be the actions of any single administration, but the normalization of open conflict between branches of government. As the judiciary and executive continue to clash, public trust in both may erode, leaving the nation more vulnerable to demagoguery and institutional decay. Meanwhile, state attorneys general have emerged as critical players in this unfolding drama. In recent years, they have not only challenged federal action in the courts, but have also coordinated across state lines, forming coalitions to confront the White House on everything from environmental protections to healthcare access. Their lawsuits have delayed or even derailed several high-profile executive orders. The decentralized nature of this resistance reflects the federalist structure of the United States, where states are not mere administrative units, but sovereign entities with significant powers of their own. This dynamic has deep historical roots. From the civil rights era to battles over immigration and education, states have often led the charge in defending or defying federal authority. Envision a future where states become even more assertive, creating a patchwork of legal standards and outcomes. This could reinforce local autonomy, allowing communities to reflect their unique values and priorities. But it could equally plunge the nation into confusion, as inconsistent rules make it difficult for individuals, businesses, and institutions to plan for the future. Consider, for example, a technology company launching a new AI product. One state may welcome innovation, while another imposes strict regulations, leaving the company caught between conflicting legal regimes. Another unpredictable element in this evolving story is the rise of new political forces. Elon Musk, the visionary entrepreneur behind Tesla and SpaceX, has hinted at forming a new political party. Should this movement gain traction, it could inject fresh energy and unpredictability into the already complex legal landscape. New political actors might champion issues that cut across traditional party lines, challenging both the established legal order and the delicate balance of power between the branches of government. The entrance of such a disruptive force could either invigorate democratic debate or further destabilize an already polarized system. The judiciary itself is not immune to these pressures. The Supreme Court, now with a deeply conservative majority, has shown a willingness to revisit and even overturn long-standing precedents. Anthony Michael Kreis, of Georgia State University, notes that recent rulings are indicative of a deeply conservative court, which could have far-reaching implications for the balance of powers. The ideological tilt of the courts matters. Future appointments, shaped by presidential elections and Senate confirmations, will determine how aggressively the judiciary checks the executive or defers to it. The role of Congress is another critical, but often overlooked, piece of the puzzle. Jessica Levinson argues that the courts are signaling to lawmakers, it is time for legislative solutions to complex problems, rather than leaving the burden to the judiciary. Whether Congress steps up to this challenge remains to be seen. In periods of divided government, legislative gridlock can leave the courts as the last line of defense, an outcome that places enormous strain on an institution designed to interpret, not make, policy. For individuals and organizations navigating this turbulent landscape, the stakes could not be higher. Businesses, especially those in fast-changing sectors like technology and healthcare, must now factor legal volatility into their strategic planning. Imagine being an entrepreneur or investor. A policy announced on a Monday could be blocked by a court on Tuesday, only to be revived the following week by an appellate decision. This constant uncertainty complicates everything from hiring and investment to research and development. Universities and academic institutions, too, find themselves on the front lines. The controversy over the University of Virginia's presidency highlights the risks of executive intrusion into academic governance. For students and faculty, these battles are not abstract. They shape curricula, research agendas, and the freedom to pursue knowledge without political interference. Transgender rights, especially in the realm of sports, have become a new flashpoint. Policies affecting participation in athletics have been challenged in courts across the country. These legal battles reflect broader cultural debates about identity, inclusion, and fairness. The outcomes will shape not only the lives of individuals affected, but also the evolving definition of civil rights in the 21st century. Artificial intelligence, once the stuff of science fiction, is now at the center of legal and ethical debates. The Trump administration's revised AI policies, released in April of 2025, aim to balance innovation with concerns about privacy, discrimination, and national security. Courts will play a key role in determining how these rules are implemented and whether they respect fundamental rights. Even America's position in the global economy is at stake. The America First trade policy has triggered a wave of lawsuits and international scrutiny. Legal challenges have questioned whether new tariffs and trade restrictions conform to international agreements and domestic law. As the world's largest economy, the United States sets the tone for global commerce, and legal uncertainty at home can reverberate across continents, affecting everything from supply chains to diplomatic relations. But beyond the headlines and the legal jargon, what does all of this mean for you, the viewer? The answer is simple. The outcomes of these battles directly affect your daily life. The rules governing immigration may determine who your neighbors are. Regulatory shifts in artificial intelligence could shape the apps and services you use. Trade policies influence the prices you pay at the store and the jobs available in your community. Even your rights as a student, worker, or entrepreneur are shaped by the outcome of these court cases. For those working in business or technology, the new era of legal unpredictability is a risk factor that cannot be ignored. Companies must now dedicate more resources to legal compliance, scenario planning, and risk management. Investors must analyze not just economic fundamentals, but also the likelihood of regulatory intervention or judicial review. In this environment, adaptability and resilience are more valuable than ever. So where are we headed? Will these confrontations plunge America into a constitutional crisis, or will they ultimately serve to strengthen the system of checks and balances? The answer is not as simple as either or. History teaches us that American institutions are remarkably adaptable. Every major conflict, whether over civil rights, executive power, or cultural change, has tested the nation's capacity for self-correction. The current standoff is no exception. It is a test of resilience, not just for political leaders and judges, but for the system itself. Here is a revealing statistic. The number of judicial decisions overturning or rebuking executive actions in the past 2 years rivals any comparable period in the last half-century. This is not merely a clash of personalities or party ideologies. It is a defining stress test for American democracy. As Robert Luther III of George Mason University points out, even victories for the presidency, like Justice Barrett's recent opinion, affirm the ongoing contest over executive authority. The outcomes of these legal battles will be shaped by future appointments, evolving political alliances, and the willingness of the courts to assert their independence. The rise of new political parties, the growing assertiveness of states, and the emergence of disruptive technologies all add layers of complexity to an already volatile equation. As you follow this saga, remember, democracy is not a spectator sport. Staying informed, asking tough questions, and participating in civic life are more important than ever. The courts may be the last line of defense, but ultimately, the strength of American democracy depends on the engagement of its citizens. If you found these insights illuminating, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. What do you think? Will this battle between the branches strengthen democracy, or are we heading towards something far more dangerous? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and join us next time as we continue to unravel the world's most pressing economic and technological power struggles.